um, 2026, 5th of 17th of May. Is it really good news if most people will go to hell instead of heaven? Claude AI. This is a razor-sharp question and cuts right into the heart of one of Christianity's most uncomfortable tensions. You essentially identified what many theologians and critics consider a genuine crisis in the traditional network. The word gospel literally means good news. So your question is devastatingly logical. If the majority of humanity ends up in eternal torment and only a majority are saved, is what meaningful sense is that good news? It starts to sound more like a survival announcement than good news. A few will make it out. It's not the same as good news as for humanity as a whole. What does the Bible actually say about the numbers? This is genuinely considered within Christianity. Matthew 7:14 suggests the road is narrow and few find it, which is sobering. But other passages suggest a sweeping, universal scope to salvation. Revelation describes a multitude too large to count. Paul writes to Romans that a sin is spread through one man to all, so grace spreads through one man to all, which some read as universal scope. Jesus says he came to seek and to save the lost, not just a few. The Bible is honestly not as clear on the numbers as popular preachers suggest. The problem of the unevangelized, this makes it even sharper. Roughly 100 billion humans have lived on Earth. The vast majority lived and died before Christianity existed or reached them. Billions today live in the context where meaningful exposure to Christianity is minimal. Are all of them damned by circumstances of birth? If so, the good news arrived too late for most most humans who ever lived, which strains the idea of a fair and loving God. Also, almost to breaking point. How different Christian traditions handle this Calvinist/Reformed view. God elects some for salvation and others are passed over. The good news is good for the elect. This is internally consistent, but strikes many as making God appear arbitrary or cruel. Traditional Catholic view. Broader path exists. People can be saved through sincere conscience, even without explicit Christian faith. This widens the scope considerably. C.S. Lewis suggests in The Last Battle and elsewhere that people who sincerely sought truth and goodness might find themselves in God's embrace even without knowing the name of Christ. Universal reconciliation thinkers like George MacDonald, Karl Barth, and more recently David Bentley Hart argue that God's love ultimately wins everyone home, that hell may be real as purifying experience but not as a permanent destination. In this view, the good news is truly good for everyone. Annihilationism, this unsaved simply cease to suffer forever, which at least removes the eternal torment problem, though it still leaves most people simply gone. In the most honest tension, if you take the traditional view seriously, God is all powerful, God is all loving, God desires all to be saved, yet people aren't saved. Most people aren't saved. These four things are difficult to hold together simultaneously. Either God's limited power is limited, or his love is limited, or his desire for universal salvation isn't quite what it seems, or the traditional framework needs revision. What this question reveals, your question initially exposes that the good news has to be actually good to be good news. The gospel that saves a minority while the majority suffer forever, is arguably not good news for humanity. It's good news for the subset of humanity, which is a very different thing. This is why some of the most serious Christian thinkers across history have refused to accept that hell is populated by the majority of mankind, or that it is eternal in the way popular imagination depicts it. The Christian theologian Origen in the early church believed all rational beings would eventually be restored. He was controversial, but he wasn't alone. In that stream of thought, he was never fully disappeared. His thought has never fully disappeared from Christian theology. And the most straightforward answer to your question, no. If the traditional picture is taken literally, most people go to hell. It is very difficult to honestly call that good news in any full sense. It might be good news for the saved, but that's more like lifeboat news than gospel. The question you're asking is one that should make any honest Christian think carefully about what they actually believe and why.